Hi, it's Lee from Silverback Runner, and today I want to talk about running gels or energy gels. I see so many people come unstuck with energy gels, and guess what? One of those people is me. So I'm going to talk about my views on what's great about energy gels, what's not so great, some of the energy gels I've tried, the problems I've had, and also if you're watching this and you're an older runner, 40s plus, how my needs as a runner in reference into fueling longer runs, because you're only going to be really looking at energy gels if you're running for longer periods of time. For me, that would be 2 hours plus. Some people might take a bit sooner, half marathon, but predominantly we're looking at a marathon or beyond. So first things first, what do energy gels actually do? I mean, at the end of the day, what's their purpose? Well, energy gels are there consumed by the runner to replace the depletion of carbohydrates that we store in our body. Now, we've got about 2 hours worth of stores of carbohydrate stored in our body. Now, I don't want to muddy the water too much. We're talking about running, fueling on carbs, fueling on fat. That's a big video. All I will say is, yes, you can train your body to become more fat efficient, and that generally means that happens as you become a better runner, because you can run for longer in those lower intensity levels, or you can get faster and still your body be in those lower intensity levels where you are going to burn fat. I think it's around about your 70% kind of effort point. Your body will have a more tendency to burn fat. Now, why does that matter? Because you've got more fat on you than you have carbs stored. So even with somebody with my body build, you'd think no fat, but there's actually more fat stored on my body, within my body, that I could utilize than there is carbohydrates. But for the majority of runners, you're going to be running at that slight higher intensity, and you're more likely to burn carbohydrate. And to be honest, unless you're doing a lot of tests, you're never going to really totally know, are you? So we're going to look at it from a carbohydrate point of view. So what happens in a lot of cases is runners do a number of things wrong. Three things potentially wrong, very much wrong, is they don't rehearse what they're going to do on race day, or they haven't trained their body what they're going to do on race day. And that means bonking or hitting the wall. So that's what you want to avoid. So, of course, you want to actually practice what you're going to fuel with. And not only while you're running, what you're going to pre-fuel with, say 48 hours before the race. How are you going to build up those glycogen stores within your body, which is stored within your muscles and within your liver? How are you going to make sure that you're well stocked up beforehand? So the night before, the week before, and if you're doing a marathon training, you need to be doing this while you're training, because you're going to be sometimes getting depleted on your glycogen stores, even in some of your longer runs on your training. So you should be thinking about what you're eating then. Also, 4 hours before you run, if you can get a good breakfast, and I don't mean a fry up, I mean, like something like oats or something that works for you, but has complex sugars in it, slow release sugars in it. Then the gel comes in as a top up as you're running along. So for me, what's really gone wrong in the past is I don't like eating a lot when I run, or let's say my body doesn't like me eating a lot when I run, and it means that my stomach feels uncomfortable. So in the past, I've avoided it. Now, of course, you get into that, even if you're running a fast, marathon, you're going to get into that 2 hour point or before. For a lot of people, it's around about 16-mile upward point, and you can just literally crash. I've seen runners at 13 miles running along, waving to everybody in the crowd, doing all this. And then at 17 miles, very sadly, I've seen them literally lying on the floor. Now that's, doing all this. And then at 17 miles, very sadly, I've seen them literally lying on the floor. Now, a dramatic example, but it can happen. And if it doesn't even happen like that, I can remember running my first marathon. I went off too fast. I didn't fuel. And I felt great at 13 miles. I was flying. But 16 miles, it felt like somebody had put lead weights in my trainers. I just felt awful. And the last 10 miles were hell. But what tends to happen, even if somebody's carrying gels then, is then when they start to feel awful, they start piling in the sugar, where your stomach's closed down by that point, or starting to close down, because your body is saying, hey, this person's in trouble, which you are. So it's putting everything to the vital organs. Well, it doesn't think that you're going to need a nice meal if you're under attack or you're in fight or flight mode. So it closes down your stomach, and then you're trying to pile in all this sugar, and it all doesn't end very well. Personally, I've got to the point where I use a gel called UCAN. It's like a starch, but I take that about every hour. That works for me. They're quite big packets, so some people might take something smaller. I've utilised Maurten as well, or Maurten Energy Gels. Really like those because they're not too sweet. I personally find having these massive highs, it picks you up initially, but the crash isn't worth it. I want something that keeps me much more level. I might not get such an initial high, but I can keep moving on, and my energy levels are more constant than having this very big high, very big low. And a lot of people you see feeding in gels just to kind of fuel the initial kind of buzz, and then they get kind of problems with their stomach. So I usually take mine around about 45 minutes, 60 minutes into a run. Now, you may take it a little bit earlier. What I will say is then take it with water. Don't take it with a sports drink, because then you're loading up the extra sugar. And this is another thing I've found, is that there's a lot of fueling products on the market that you can fuel the carbohydrates in via liquid. It makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. The only challenge I find is I can't then work out my liquid needs versus my carbohydrate needs. So what I tend to do is utilise a kind of, I don't know what you call them, like a hydrating tablet into just water. So that makes a drink just for hydration purposes. It's got no sugar in it, nothing. So when I take that have a sip of that with my gel, I know I'm not adding in loads more sugar into my system. I'm controlling that with the gel. When I want hydration in the race, I can either have a sip of my drink, or I can have a sip of water as I go past the station. But I have a very defined control of the actual what's going in my body and when and how. For me, when you've got something that is a liquid and it's giving you all your carbohydrate needs, then, for example, if you're ultimately more thirsty, then need carbohydrates, you start knocking back the liquid because you're thirsty, then you're having too many carbohydrates. Or if you're not that thirsty, you might not take on enough carbohydrate. Some people, it's not an issue. I totally, fully accept that I've never had stomach issues in like needing to go to the toilet or anything like that. But I have had stomach issues where I felt my stomach close down, where it won't take anything on. So I know little and often is better for me, and also keeping those two quite distinct gives me kind of clarity when I'm running. But all these things have to work right for you on race day, and the only way that you're going to do that is by rehearsal, by going out on your longer runs and testing out your hydration, testing out your gels or what you want to eat, because that's the only way you're going to find out. And if you want to use the gels that a marathon are going to use, then find out pre-run who they're sponsored by, and run with those. So I see too many runners kind of like just rock up on the day and leave it to chance. Find out what works or doesn't work in your training runs, and that's what I've tended to do. You know, I've got a number of gels I know I can tolerate. So for instance, the Maurten gels, I'm pointing over there because on my notes, tend to be quite expensive. So if I'm going to run with them, I'll do a couple of runs with them, but then I might go over to another type of gel that I also know I can use, but might be slightly cheaper. But I have tested the Maurtens if I'm going to use them in a race situation. So it's really getting to know what works for you, what doesn't work for you, the timings, what's going to be too much. So, I really have to be, strong on that. And the other thing which I struggle with, which is a silly thing, is storage. I really don't like running with too much stuff on me. I've got a hydration pack. I don't use the backpack, but I put a few bottles of water and hydration stuff and gels in the pockets. But sometimes that gets quite hot, even in the UK, and I'm not a massive fan of that. So I'm starting to move around to a running bout, but I like to wear them fairly low. I don't like it over my stomach because when I'm breathing out and everything, I feel constricted. But something like that where you can store some gels and stuff like that is really useful. So yet again, that's on your rehearsal side of it, so that you're really clear what works, what's comfortable, what you don't like, what you do like. So, I know I'm trying to driving this point home, but it's really, really important. Just kind of lastly, just like looking at this thing, do gels work at all? Yes, they do, but would you be better off taking real food? And my view is, if you're going to run, say, like a 4-hour marathon, perhaps 4.5, which is a very popular kind of sort of time or less, if you've pre-fueled, pre-run, the week prior, they used to call it carb loading. I don't like that term, but if you've kind of got, you've got some food in you and your glycogen stores are pretty topped up, and you've then taken the time to have a good breakfast, make sure it's a while before the run, about 4. Some people can say 2 hours. I have to go about 4 hours. I can have another little top up, something really light. I'm a big fan of Rice Krispies. I don't know what they're called throughout the world, because I can take them 20 minutes before a run and my stomach can tolerate them. But I would have a proper breakfast if it was like oats or something like that, 4 hours, so that's had time to get into my system. Then I find gels work really well as a top up. Where I think I would struggle, and I think some people would be, is if you start getting into a longer marathon run or perhaps a longer endurance run. I think the simple sugars in gels they're just too much for too long, I would then say that you'd need what you could call real food with some complex sugars in them. Doesn't mean it's got to be, in air quotes, healthy food. I think when you're running endurance events for longer periods of time, particularly ultras, healthy or not, it comes down to what's your picnic game like. What can you tolerate, what can you get in you, and what will just fuel you forward. If it's pizza, it's pizza. But my point being is that real food is obviously going to be, for many, preferable. I know people that run marathons. You probably wouldn't call this real food, but jelly babies. See, for me, just saying that makes me feel quite queasy, just thinking about running around the whole time with jelly babies. But people can do it. Could you run 6-7 hours on jelly babies, or would you need something a little bit more savoury? Yet again, if you know that you're going to be out there that time, test it. Perhaps have a combination of some real food if you are going to be out longer, because it's a longer endurance event, or that, your marathon time means that you're going to be out longer, and perhaps, fueling in 6-7 tubes of gel isn't going to work, so that, perhaps there is, little bites or something. I mean, I've used dates in the past, just chew on a date or something like that. So, some people I've heard people utilize crisps. It can be what works for you, but it comes back to this rehearsal strategy that you've got to use. So hopefully that's, helped you kind of become aware of, running gels can work. They can really do you in if you use the wrong ones for you. My personal favourites, as I said earlier, are the Maurten Energy Gel. Great gel, hideously expensive. It's almost like a tapioca kind of like feel in the mouth. It's almost semi-solid, but it's not, and it kind of washes down. Very neutral taste. I really like it. Very expensive. So is the UCAN Edge, to be honest. But their kind of claim to fame is the carbohydrates go through into the stomach, into the intestine really quickly. I can't tell you if they do or don't. I've got no medical training. But what I tell you, when I've used it, I've had no stomach issues, and I've found them really, really good. But they are on the pricey side. As I say, the UCAN Edge is what I'm using at the moment. They have this, what they call proprietary super starch. It is a low glycemic complex carbohydrate made. They cook it themselves. It's painted in and all that, non-GMO. Again, I don't know. I just like it because I take one every hour. As I say, I don't get such a sugar rush, but feels to me a much more level release of the carbohydrates. So that works well. The final one I've used is a Cheer Energy Gel by 33 Fuel. What I really like about this is it comes pre-dried. It's dry, so you just take the top off and you can fill it up with whatever liquid you want. It could be coconut water, it could be coffee if you wanted that, cold coffee. So, and it's only got 4 ingredients in it. I think it's organic chia seeds, coconut palm sugar, organic Himalayan salt. And I've used that and I've really enjoyed using that as well. And that's much more, on a much more cheaper price point, than the previous two. But there are so many energy gels. I'm not going to tell you they're the only ones. So you've got to kind of experiment and see what works for you, for your age group, for your type of runner you are. And rehearse in your training, find out what works, get your body used to it, and you'll find that gels will assist you in your marathon goals. The only thing I will just add right at the end is it's not a replacement for decent training. The better trained you are, like we said right at the beginning, the more kind of your aerobic system is really switched in, then your body will be more efficient at burning the carbohydrates, burning fat. you will need less interventions from gels, and the gels that you do intervene with will be more efficiently used. So, you know, they're not a get out of jail card as to cover up a bad training situation, because you'll take too many and you'll just feel crap. But hope this has helped, and if you've liked the video, you know, please subscribe to the channel or give us a like. That would be fantastic. Anyway, Lee Boniface from silverbackrunner.com. Bye for now.